Thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Daryl D. Lane, where I get to talk about everything that I normally don't get the chance to talk about. My regular sports podcast, Barbershop Sports Talk, which you guys can all find on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iRadio, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasting apps or platforms from. Also, thank you to everybody who's tuning in via YouTube live stream, Facebook Live, and Twitter/Periscope. Gonna have a lot to discuss today. Gonna have Mr. Zach Williff on, and we're gonna talk some basketball, some football, some other just general sports stuff. So it should be a fun, easygoing podcast, and that will be again on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher. By the way, also check on the descriptions below, and you can see the YouTube links. Like, comment, subscribe. I always love hearing your thoughts. So first, what we have is this Bills versus Titans, down on Monday Night Football. I have a couple thoughts about this game. Number one, the Bills should have won this game. That game, particularly, I believe it was the first quarter, they settled for 2 field goals that should have been touchdowns. Tennessee does not have a very good defense. The fact that Tennessee was able to hold on and give up 3 each time, which adds up to 6 instead of 14. 6 to 14, that's a big swing. That's a big gap, particularly when Tennessee doesn't have a very good defense. The Bills need to be better on that front, and that's all part of the game when the game ends up being 31-34 in the fourth quarter in the waning moments of the game. You have to finish it. The drive, you have to punch it in the end zone right there. Also, Josh Allen threw a pick in his own territory that led to Titans points. So, not the best performance for the Buffalo Bills. They have been shredding teams besides this game, but a game on the road, there's nothing wrong with being humbled a little bit. Josh Allen had a quote, and I love this, and I'm going to read this to you. He said, "I love that Coach McDermott trusted me at the end of the game. We're a resilient team, and I know this will fuel us going forward." He is talking about the last play of the game at 31-34, where they decide to try to QB 4th and 1, I believe it was 4th and 1, to keep the drive going. I love the move. Shows trust. Sometimes the plays don't work for you. That's the way it goes. I think it's easy to second guess after you don't win the game, but Michael Jordan once said, "It is because I fail." So the Buffalo Bills will definitely learn from this and continue to be a power in the AFC. Now I want to go to this really quickly with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a monster, folks. Over 100 yards rushing, just dominated the game, was the best player on the field. I think Derrick Henry should be getting MVP consideration. I know people like Lamar. I know people like Josh Allen. I know people like Kyler. I know Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Those guys are, of course, always in the mix. Tom Brady's having a phenomenal season. But when you talk about value, the Tennessee Titans will not have a single win on the year without Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry makes Ryan Tannehill. He helps make life easier for Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. He also helps that defense by keeping that horrid Moribund defense off the field. When it is in doubt, they give the ball to Derrick Henry and they say, "Hey, take us to the promised land." I have not seen a dominance like this from a running back since Adrian Peterson. Right? That's the last time I can remember a running back just physically taking over the game. And the thing is, he's bigger than AP. He's stronger than AP. I don't know if he's faster. His acceleration's better. And that stiff arm, for sure, better than Adrian Peterson. And he doesn't fumble the ball like Adrian Peterson did. Adrian Peterson used to have an issue with that. Adrian Peterson got MVP when the Minnesota Vikings finished 10-6. Christian Ponder. So there has been historical precedence from this with a 10-6, 9-7, 11-5 type of team, getting into the playoffs, losing as the Vikings that year did. They lost, I believe it was on Sunday Night Football. I think they might have got blown out by the Saints or whatever, or the Packers. It was somebody they got blown out by. And Adrian Peterson still won the MVP over Peyton Manning, who had a historical season with the Denver Broncos. So I think it's very much within reason that Derrick Henry could win MVP, and I think he probably should right now. He's on pace for over 2,000 yards on the season. I'm going to get a drink of water right here. I got to get the voice right. I woke up with a sore throat, but that's neither here nor there. So, yeah, I think Derrick Henry, when we look at it, like, best year stretch by a running back. You can put it up with Emmitt Smith's best years. Like I said, Adrian Peterson's best years. Eric Dickerson's best years. Sweetness's best years. Robert Payton. You can put it up with any Jim Brown, right? You can Walter Payton, Jim Brown. You can put it up with any running back in the history of this game. O.J. Simpson. That's how special Derrick Henry has been, and it's always great to see. And don't have bias. I don't want MVP voters that bias and say a non-quarterback can't win MVP, because Henry's been breaking barriers. They always say a running back can't win Heisman. Then what does he do? He's like was the last non-QB to win the Heisman. That's all Derrick Henry did. So Derrick Henry can break that mold as well. Let's go to this. I just want to say this really quickly. So Caleb Farley, the Tennessee Titans first-round pick, torn ACL, will be out for the remainder of the season. This is really bad. What you need is you need development. And he did not play his last year of college football. He was a COVID opt-out. He did not play much for the Tennessee Titans this year. There's been a lot of issues of what people wondering and being skeptical of Farley getting on the field. He was my number 2 corner in this past draft class, and now he's torn his ACL. So he gets no reps as a starter for time to be off. I know he's a physical freak, a physical specimen of the highest order, but you're going to need those reps. So that is sad to see for a young player. Now I want to go to power rankings at number 10. And by the way, I do want to say this before I get into it, Tennessee Titans have no place in the top 10. I know they beat the Buffalo Bills. That's a big. They also lost. They needed a miracle spec Seattle team that's now 2-4, and they have not been great. They barely beat a Indianapolis Colts team with Carson Wentz with 2 sprained ankles and barely move. So the Tennessee, and they got shellaxed opening weekend by the Arizona Cardinals, who are the number 1 team in the NFL, but just got absolutely shellaxed. I think they put a 40 burger on them. So Tennessee can't be in the top 10. They're going to have to keep winning to get in my top 10. Just want to put that out there. Number 10, Kansas City Chiefs. They got back on track, beating the Washington football team. The defense looked better. The offense is still spectacular. They have the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the rated teams of the NFL season. They have great weapons, both in the running game and the passing game. The offensive line is a little shaky, but the defense in the front 7 is not bad. Cincinnati, real contender. Very impressive how they blew out a very tough-minded Detroit Lions team. Do not look past that. The Chargers dropped. They got destroyed by the Baltimore Ravens. That's why I have the Chargers at 8. Obviously, they lost the Dallas Cowboys as well to begin the season, but against Baltimore, the talent difference between those 2 teams is not that exponential. You're on the road. You have to be competitive. You can't get blown out and get relaxed like that. At number 7, I'm going with the Green Bay Packers. They just had a bunch of consistent wins, right? San Francisco 49ers can't put too much stock in that one, right? Detroit Lions, they also beat the Cincinnati Bengals, and they beat the Chicago Bears. So, no signature great one yet, but all very good wins where they're controlling the game, where they're winning. But I'm going to need to see a little bit more before I can move Green Bay up. But the biggest thing about Green Bay is their consistency besides week 1 where they got blacked by the New Orleans Saints. At number 6, I'm going with Dallas Cowboys. With the Dallas Cowboys, I was not very impressed against New England. I know when it's all said and done, you just have to find a way to win. Jones, blown coverage at the end, how they won overtime. I just wasn't super impressed with Dallas, so I'm going to put them at 6. Number 5, going with my Buffalo Bills. This was to figure out where to put the Bills. I think they've had the biggest margin of victory out of all these NFL teams. I know people are going to say it was against the Washington football team, the Miami Dolphins, the Houston Texans, but guess what? You don't blow out teams by 20-plus points. That happen no matter how bad the team is. Like, look at all of Houston's wins. Houston was very competitive with the Browns. I can give you a bunch of other scores. Houston almost beat the New England Patriots. I can give you other scores where these teams were competitive with other teams in the NFL that you would think highly of. So let's not play they blew them out, but they were a bad team. No, blowing out a team in the NFL when the talent gap is so exponential, what is not exponential like it is in college, is very impressive. At number 4, I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champs. At number 3, I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens. They are one overtime win in week 1 to Derek Carr and the Raiders, who started 3-0, very hot at the time, right? For being number 1 on this list. And them blowing out the Chargers team that was very game, that the Browns, that I think a lot of people around the league have respect for, a Chargers team that was competitive with the Cowboys, a Chargers team that dominated the Raiders like this year. I think a lot of people have high expectations for them in the AFC, and they just destroyed them, took manhood. They were getting hit over the middle. They couldn't get open. Justin Herbert was seeing ghosts because they kept hitting him again and again and again. And then you see Lamar, and Lamar is the Lamar Jackson show, right? Like they call it the Michael Vick experience. This is the Lamar Jackson show. Get used to it. So at number 2, we have the Los Angeles Rams destroying the Giants. My guy Ben was going to be close, and that's the reason that was not on one of my 3 guaranteed bets. So shame on you, Ben Cameron. No, just joking. But the Rams, very impressive. They just systematically destroy a lot of these teams. The only reason they are not at number 1 is because they lost to Kyler Murray in the air. The Cleveland Browns have a top 5 roster in the NFL. to blot a team like Cleveland is very impressive. Specifically, when you go on the road to do it, when you know there's a 3-hour time difference, body clocks, et cetera, and you come out and from start to finish, you are the best. Also, people call Cleveland a physical team. People say Arizona's more of a Arizona dominated Cleveland at the line of scrimmage. They were more physical, and we already knew they were faster, and they just whooped their butt. It was an old-fashioned arse whoop, and that's what that was. So Arizona is the unanimous number 1. Now, next up, we have this Washington State's coach, Nick Arolva, was fired after not complying with COVID vaccine mandates. So I think this is a really interesting story right here. And I do want to say this because it kind of intersects with going on in the NBA, right? I personally don't think, maybe it's the best thing to fire people if they're not getting vaccinated, but that's up to the individual employer's discretion. But I do want to say this. I do have sympathy for Nick in this regard, right? The coach at Washington State. When you sign up for a job, you don't think that once in a lifetime, once 100 every year, because last time we had a pandemic, right? Like when the Spanish flu happened or whatever, wasn't that like in the early 1900s? Things don't happen very often. So it's like a once in a year scenario happens, right? And he has to make a decision. He didn't want to, whether it's because he's anti-vax, political, doesn't like being told what to do, whatever his reason is, he decides he doesn't want to take it. And I do feel for him because when you get into coaching, you don't think that this is ever going to be an issue, but it is. But here's what I will say. In life, either adapt or die, right? Like that's what they kind of said in the olden days when people were all cavemen, adapt or die. Like newspapers, you know what? Newspapers, you can find newspapers online now. You can find the Washington Post online. You can find the Wall Street Journal online, the New York Times online. You can find the Chicago Tribune online. It's not just paper. It's just not on the newspaper. You want to know why? Because you have to evolve with the times. We're living in a more technological society. That's just the way it is. So adapt or die. That's like when people on TV are saying, you want to know what? We're going to keep it in black and white, just not 20s. No. As things advance, things change. New information, things have to change and you or die. And you can fall on your own sword, your own principle, but that's your right. But when the people are employing you, put that in place. It just is what it is. An NBA season starts today. Some things I'm looking forward to. Number one, battle of the two best players in the NBA. I think it's Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kevin Durant. Who wins that match? Also, who is the Nets going to be? Who's the third option going to be? A Blake Griffin? Is it going to be somebody else? Who's going to be the third guy for the Brooklyn Nets? We know Kyrie's not playing because he doesn't want to acquiesce to the COVID mandates in New York City. And also in terms of the Lakers Golden State Warriors game, that's the game that's going to be the late night game on TNT. Who brings the ball up more, LeBron or Westbrook? Who's playing more quote unquote point guard, LeBron or Russell Westbrook? Those are things I'm interested in as well. Also, how much is Anthony Davis playing center? How comfortable does he look at center? I know statistically he plays great at the center position, but is he getting banged up? Do they decide to have more minutes where they're having Dwight at center to see how all of that works? And then I want to see the Lakers late game, last 5 minutes, their lineup, how they work, how Russell Westbrook coincides with LeBron. Is Russell Westbrook taking bad shots? Is LeBron saying like, oh, God? So those are all things I'm interested to see for both of those games. And that's all we have for today. Have a great day, everybody.